Hey, thanks everyone for joining. This is Renata Gomide. I'm part of the Alumni Club of Silicon Valley, University of Michigan. I'm the career chair. I have been organizing multiple events in the past years. If that's not your first time here, you've probably seen me before. Super excited today is our second event of the series, How I Lead Office Hours with the C-Suite. Today we have CMO of 1Password, Raj Sarkar. He was also part of the 22 Forbes Entrepreneurs CMO list. Before 1Password, he was the CMO of Prisma Cloud at Palo Alto Networks, and he had multiple marketing roles at Google, Cisco, Atlassian before. He went to University of Michigan for his MBA. Thank you, Raj. We're super excited to have you here.
Yeah, excited to be here. Just don't ask me any hard question. That's all, because you're recording. I can't answer any hard questions.
We will ask all the hard questions. So I'm going to start asking you questions, but I definitely want everybody here to be participating. So feel free to start putting your questions in the chat. I'll read them, and we will also have Q&A time towards the end. Okay, so feel free to start asking questions. Let's dive in. First question, how did you become a CMO? When in your career did you plan to be in the C-suite?
I didn't plan for it, to be honest. It just happened. So the story is, I was at Atlassian for almost 6 years. Worked in almost all products in the Atlassian family. And one of the early investors in Atlassian was Axel. And Axel invested in this company called 1Password just before the pandemic happened. And they reached out to me and they were like, hey, Raj, we worked with you at Atlassian. Can you come and work with 1Password and help them build out marketing? Because 1Password, if you look at the history of 1Password, 1Password predominantly has kind of bootstrapped for 15 years before they took VC.
You bite, and then I'll have some more after.
I like that. They asked me to come and talk to 1Password team. So I've been talking to 1Password team, on and off, and then they asked me to become an advisor. While as an advisor, I left Atlassian and went to Palo Alto Networks for a few months. Palo Alto Networks from GTA motion perspective was very different than any of the early companies I worked for. Anyway, so I was talking to 1Password. They're like, hey, we're looking for a CMO. They were like, hey, you should come and talk to us. So that's how it happened, actually. And it's funnily enough, and this is what I tell my team as well, when you chase behind titles, titles don't happen. And when you don't chase them, it just, if it's the right time, it's just going to happen. So that's kind of my philosophy as well.
That's awesome. So what were these skills actually that were fundamental for you to get into the CMO position? Because I'm pretty sure that even though you didn't have a plan, you were doing something right. So that's why they pick you.
Yeah, I mean, in the sense, I always have the philosophy that I'm not going to be in the same role for more than 2 years. Though I've been in the same company, if you see at Google, I was 2.5, 3 years. Cisco was at Atlassian, I was for 6 years. Atlassian, for example, in my journey, I have worked in almost every single product in the family. So I've kind of, created marketing plan for the developer audience, and then for the consumer audience, and then for the enterprise audience. I also started off in product marketing, and then kind of how Google defines PMM and Atlassian defined PMM. It was almost a kind of a mini CMO role to some extent. But I started more on the product marketing, on the analytical side of marketing first. And then in the later part of my Atlassian career, we moved into the brand and, and the creative side as well. So that helped me because I basically, worked with all the different functions of marketing, starting from brand and comms to product marketing to ops and analytics. So that was one piece which helped. And the second piece is obviously the leadership component, which can't be taught in a school or a class. It just happens with experience. And I think I picked most of my leadership ethos working from great leaders at both Google and Atlassian. So that kind of helped me from a leadership perspective as well. So those are the two things: craft, leadership.
Oh, that's great. Like anything that you learned in Michigan that helped you, like those 4 Ps, any framework.
You know what Michigan helped me? Helped me learn how to work with different people. You become more patient because Michigan, you do you do projects as a team, and the team sometimes you get to choose, sometimes it's assigned to you. I think the assigned to you is more a realistic, realistic way of like what a corporate life looks like, because sometimes you just inherit a team. That's what happened to me at 1Password. Like I didn't get to, like, I built out the team in the long run. I hired a lot of leaders, but there was already a team in place. So that's one of the skills I think which I picked in Michigan really helped me, in my career.
And what do you think it's the main challenge to pick the right people, especially when you were in a company that it's probably still forming the culture? It's not like very well established like Google. Right. Any challenge there?
I think it's very easy to test people on their hard skills during the interview. What is really hard to test is the soft skills. Mm-hmm. And this is why people gravitate towards bringing in people they have worked with, because you already know what their styles are, right? The second thing you can't test is leadership. And it's very hard to, test leadership during an interview process, right? I mean, there may be some people who are really good at interviewing, but when they come to a job, it doesn't match what they said, during the interview process. So I think that the harder part is the leadership and the soft skills. I think the easier part is the hard skills, the craft skills, and things like that.
Yeah, well, I think that we all just downplay the soft skills, because all the job descriptions, usually you have 20 items that are hard skills and maybe one item at the end, like, oh yeah, you also need to know leadership, or you need to communicate and whatnot, right? So right. Good that you're saying that actually should be inverted.
Inverted, yeah. And it becomes more important as you go up the hierarchy, right? Like when you're starting off as, an IC and starting early on in your career, your craft skills are more important. But as you go up the chain, your soft skills become more and more important, because you get to run organizations where there may be certain areas you're not good at or you don't understand. It's impossible for me to understand every single function in marketing. I have like 16 functions in my organization. I'm not an expert in all those 16 functions. I only know, probably 6 or 7 really, really well. And, I know a little bit to be dangerous on the other 7. But the point is like, hey, are you able to ask the right questions or not, right? That's what it was. So the soft, and then how well what you like, how do you motivate your team? How do you inspire your team? So all those things become more and more important as you go up the chain.
And what were the main skills that you had to learn after you were in the role, especially like in the soft skill side that you didn't have before?
I think, and I give this feed, I always say this, that feedback is a gift or feedback is a blessing. I think what I've seen is the people who are most successful in their careers are people who actually constantly crave for feedback, right? Because soft skills, most of the time, you might have a blind spot which you are not aware of. Mm-hmm. And it has happened to me so many times in my career. Like I always tell this story, like at Atlassian at one point in time, I was getting fired because people I was trying too much to protect my team, and it was harming, the other cross-functional teams at the same time. So one of the biggest thing you can do, like especially on the soft skills side, on the leadership side, is always ask for feedback and be open to change. I mean, that's the only way you're going to get better and be successful in your career.
Yeah, and also give feedback, right? Sometimes it's hard to give the constructive feedback, the feedback that's not like, yeah, it's a good job, when people are not meeting the mark.
Yeah, I talk about this, like one of the leadership ethos in my organization, I call it radical candor, and I'm sure you all have heard about this term. This is very commonly used in many organizations. Radical candor is all about like caring deeply and challenging directly at the same time. Because if you don't care deeply and you challenge directly, then you may come across as obnoxious when you're giving feedback. So coming from the perspective of like really you want that person to be successful, and that's why you're giving that feedback. When you're giving feedback, I think caring deeply portion becomes more important.
Yeah, I do think that feedback both ways, it's complex. It should be easier, but it's just something that we need to build in our lives, probably since younger age. So let's go a little bit more in the technical side. You have some very interesting articles about outbound fury, and I definitely want to hear more about that and how you're using it to make enterprise tech more human.
Yeah, I think I'll separate the two. Outbound fury, I think I don't know if any of you have read the blog post. I wrote about it in the blog post. So the way the outbound fury, I learned about it for the first time was when I was at Google and part of the Google enterprise team. And at that time, the Google Apps team was competing with Microsoft Office. And Microsoft Office was a very well-known product. In the industry, every single company in the world was using Microsoft Office. So how do you compete with a product which is like number one? And one of the mantra I think the Google enterprise team had is every single article which talks about Microsoft Office should be talking about Google Apps. That's how it started. And the whole concept of outbound fury is being furious from an outbound motion perspective, which means that every week we'll get in a room and talk about, okay, what press coverage we can get this week, like what interesting article we can write this week, what blog post can we write. So like we will do like brainstorming on a daily basis. And the whole idea behind that was there are two ways to build brand. One way to build brand is basically having your name plastered all over San Francisco, which is you see it like billboards all around you, right? During those times, Google didn't have a lot of advertising budget. This is pre-Chrome days I'm talking about. Like Chrome started, I think the Chrome was the first ad, Google ad, like Google search ad, and then the Chrome ad. Those were the two ads which came out. But Google didn't spend a lot of money on brand. So the idea behind outbound fury is like, how do you do brand building on a dime? And it's kind of the same philosophy, at Atlassian as well, because we didn't like when I was part of the Bitbucket team, we didn't have a lot of dollars to spend. So we would come out with interesting ways to engage our customers on the social media. You would try to do like a lot of blog posts, so we ranked higher on search terms which our customers were searching for. So that is what like outbound fury is in a nutshell. Now, talking about being more human with enterprise is a completely separate conversation. And this conversation is happening more right now because what's happening is the workforce is changing, right? The Facebook, like the people who are joining the workforce right now are basically born in the internet and Facebook generation, right? They're more used to consumerization of that, right? So one of the things I think a lot of enterprise companies do a mistake is basically like say, like if you go 10 years back, they were like, oh, you need to be serious when you talk to like enterprise buyers. Like you can't be colorful. You can't use the pink color in in your design if you're talking to enterprise. And now this has changed drastically because a lot of the purchase is getting influenced by the people who are using it, right? 10 years back, you would go and sell a solution to a CISO. Now it's like the developers make a call what products they're going to use. The marketeers make the call like what apps they're going to use. So it's more important for enterprise like products to talk to the buyer as a human. So that's the whole perspective around.
Yeah, and I think that that's the great concept, especially now that we think the millennials are buyers, right? Like even Gen Z are potentially buyers depending on which organization that they are working for. And the way that they consume news or ads or you name it is different from the previous generation.
100%.
I think that the companies really need to adapt to that. Great that you are ahead of the game. One other question here. So what are the main differences to lead marketing for like a public company like Google, right? Other companies and more like a private company that probably like fast grow mode, etc.
Yeah. I think in both scenarios, you have pressure. In one scenario, you have pressure coming from your from your earnings call. You set an expectation and you have to meet the numbers. On a private company, it's kind of very similar. You have expectation from the investors, but I think the difference is in a public company, you're under more scrutiny, right? So you have to be very careful about what do you say publicly, what like when you are doing a marketing campaign, like you have to be more conscious about a lot of stuff when you're a public company versus when you're a private company. I think as a private company, you have more freedom to experiment and play around, which you don't have as much when you're a public company.
Did that help you on that commercial that you guys did?
The Ryan Reynolds commercial?
First commercial?
No, like, so the whole reasoning behind the commercial goes back to what I was talking about. Like security is a term which like people are usually like, it's hard, it's tough, right? And we wanted to make security kind of accessible to consumers. And that was the whole idea behind the commercial. Like, hey, if you want to go after like non-tech savvy audiences, the only way we can reach to non-tech savvy audiences is people like Ryan Reynolds. And that was the idea of the commercial. The concept of password manager is kind of hidden, but it's not actually, out there. I think our second commercial will be more around the password manager.
Yeah, you guys should Google the commercial that they had. Were you like sad when they were recording the commercial? Were you involved? No, you didn't meet all the acts.
So he did it in the UK because he did it in his club. So yeah, we were not there. But like some of my team members actually watched it via Zoom while the recording was happening, but they were not there. Also remember, this is like COVID. So people couldn't like fly easily and all that stuff. So my team actually watched it via Zoom while the filming was happening.
Cool. Cool. I hope the next time maybe you guys can meet. And how do you divide your attention among like focusing on the company marketing strategy, understands where the industry is going, evaluating new market and ads channels, and building your own personal brand? Because I know that you are very, like, you have a very strong personal brand. You're in Forbes, a bunch of other super CMOs. So how do you do everything?
I was going to ask you that question. That's a loaded question. So I'll,
you can break it down. We can talk about
I want to separate the personal from the professional thing. So I keep saying this. I use LinkedIn almost like as my personal outbound fury channel for my brand.
That works.
And I always tell this to my team, like, if you can't do like marketing for yourself, how are you gonna market a product? So I always have this joke. I find time to do stuff. I think it's important to have like a personal brand, but professionally, I think the way I divvy up like in the mornings are when I read mostly about what's going on in the industry, like things like that. Like I usually have like an hour blocked in the morning when I do some kind of reading, like what's happening in tech, like what's happening in in the financial world. So I spend some time in the morning doing that, and then usually after dinner in the evening is when I do the reading for the company related stuff, because I don't have time during the day. Like most of the time I'm either meetings or I'm trying to like finish a document or something like that, right? So that's how I usually divvy up my time. And then weekend is all about like nonfiction reading.
And do you rely a lot on your team to make sure that all the areas are moving?
I mean, there's no way I can have a finger on 16 functions at the same time. I have to trust my team, that they're doing the right thing. And then they will come to me the stuff which they think are the most important that needs my attention.
So there's a comment with a question here from Gaurav. Gaurav, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Raj. So, in our company, we have a lot of products. So it's a blessing, and I really feel it's more of a curse because just too many products, right? So now, as a very big public company, now the management has gone with a few very, very high-level marketing campaigns, which kind of makes sense, yes. But I think the con is that it doesn't really help all the product areas nurture their own areas for revenue and retention and all that. Also, the other thing is, while the management wants to track revenue by specific product areas that are, not all of them, some prominent ones, they don't encourage marketing by product, but they want to talk about customer experience, like very, very high level, right? So I just feel like, it doesn't work out for the people who are in the trenches. So what would you have done, right? How would you have handled this?
Yeah. So there's two ways you can do it. One is the Google way, and the other is the Atlassian way, right? I mean, both companies have a very different philosophies. I think the Google philosophy is a little bit different from the Atlassian philosophy. And because Google has so many products, right? Like now, if you're a CMO of Google, how do you prioritize where do you spend your advertising dollars, for example, right? So if you see, the way Google did it is very smart. The brands which have a descriptive name usually used to get like less brand dollars, and the brand which is like had a non-descriptive name are the ones which got a lot of dollars. And there is philosophy behind it, because the non-descriptive names were like the primary bread earners for Google, right? Like if you think about Android, Chrome, right? Those are all the products which used to get a lot of love because they're kind of platforms for the company. And then you can build you can basically build a lot of associated products, which goes in line with the key product areas. Atlassian had a different philosophy. Again, Atlassian is a B2B company, and we used to call it land and expand products. And the idea there is you bring in customers with those land products, right? And then you basically upsell or cross-sell the expand products. So for example, if you look at the Atlassian portfolio, Jira and Trello, those are the two products which are the land products. So they used to get majority of the advertising dollars. And then Confluence, pick any other product. Jira Service Desk, they were all expand products, and they didn't used to get a lot of like brand / acquisition dollars. So you can come, like, even if you're like a company with a portfolio of products, you can figure it out, like what products you are gonna basically use to attract new customers, and what products you're gonna use to just upsell and cross-sell them.
Okay, thank you. That's an interesting take.
Ooh. Any other question? Anyone wants to get off mute and ask a question? If no, keep thinking. I'll continue to ask some questions here. How do you build and maintain a culture of innovation in your team, in your organization, especially as your organization grows?
It's an interesting question. I think it starts with a culture of failures, right? If you don't create a safe space for failures, people are not gonna, think outside the box. So one, like I was talking about, like how I had leadership ethos. I also have something called the craft ethos, and two of them, like one of them is around like, hey, you should be extremely proud of what you're shipping, right? At the same time, associated with it, I have an ethos which says, fail fast and iterate, right? And the whole idea there is like, hey, you should be able to try out, new out of the box ideas which we haven't tried before. I always say this: if you are not failing enough, you're not basically trying hard. That's what it is. So that's how you celebrate failures, you encourage failures, and that's how you basically create kind of a culture of innovation.
And how do you know when to like stop a project that may not be working? Even if it sounded like a good idea, it was working in the beginning, and maybe something changed, not working. Now you have to stop it and move on. How do you do this without making the team feel discouraged?
Yeah, there's this sunk cost fallacy, which usually, happens a lot.
Yeah.
Like, hey, it has been working, now it's not working, but I've invested so much in this, so I will keep doing it. Yeah, at a certain point in time, you have to just pull the plug. I mean, the numbers will tell you, right? Like if it worked in the first 3 months and it's not working in the last 30 days, then that messaging is probably not working. Like there may be something wrong, inherently wrong with it. In general, in this day and age, like even like a viral video like the Ryan ad, majority of the views happen in the first 7 days. After that, it's long tail. So, I mean, everything has a shelf life. So at a certain point in time, you just have to pull it.
And who measured the results? You're talking about like the financial results. Is it your team? Do you work with finance? How does that work?
I have an ops and analytics team, and their primary job is to basically understand the efficacy of our campaigns. I think any marketing organization you go to, you will find like an ops and analytics function.
Moving to some personal side. So what is something that you believe in and that other people think is crazy?
I can't think of anything seriously, right? I thought about it. It's like, is there anything I think about which I did like the only thing I can think about is this whole concept of enterprise marketing, and like I have fought battles internally about it many times. Like how, hey, enterprise marketing, you need to change it. This is not how we should do enterprise marketing. That's the only thing I can think about. There's nothing else I could think about where I would say like what I think people would think like I'm crazy. But I like that question. It's a hard question.
Well, to get you thinking, like, do you think that, for example, the enterprise market should move from putting those big ads in the airports and go do some dancing TikTok type of thing?
It's happening. No, it's happening. There are some interesting companies doing interesting experiments. And again, this is like out of the box thinking, right? I've been asking my team to go check. Like I'm like bugging my team to have a 1Password TikTok account for such a long time. I think it's happening, but see, TikTok doesn't scale for enterprise. And like, if you're talking about medium, which is different, like TikTok as Medium still is predominantly a B2C medium. I won't say it a B2B, but and you can see the demographics of TikTok versus, I think Facebook is a good place to do, like, if you wanted to like do dance videos and talk to like B2B enterprise buyers, like Facebook might be a good medium actually, because it has a much older demographics versus TikTok or Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very interesting. I'm pretty sure that when you were in the MBA, the way you'd be talking about marketing or how to split your advertising dollars would be very different than what you're doing today, because things just change so fast.
Oh yeah. Remember when I was in business school, iPhone was not there. iPhone came into existence after I left business school. And imagine a world without smartphones. A smartphone came into existence in 2007. This is like 15 years. So you're absolutely right. When I was in business school, we were talking about something very different.
Yeah. How do you see, like, I know this is a little bit off question that's not on the list, but like, how do you see all these companies who didn't have ads who are now really trying to get into that? Example, like Netflix and other like content driven, like companies that ever said no to ads and now they are just changing just because of how the market's changing. Do you think that this will open for maybe like new ad platforms, new ways of advertising, and maybe even for like for B2B? And how do you think that those shifts are?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest thing shift, which is, you're talking about TV, right? One of the biggest shift happening in TV is before TV used to be broadcast, right? Like in the sense, like you can't do specific targeting on TV, ever, right? Now, what has happened with YouTube, Hulu, they have started streaming. You can do specific targeting, audience targeting on those mediums. So, for example, when I was like the ran on that, we used the MNTN network to specifically target specific audiences. So we don't have to run a Super Bowl ad. The Super Bowl ad is broad, 30 million people are going to watch it. But you can do specific targeting, and platforms like YouTube and Hulu, which was not the scenario, 10 years back. So that's why you see a lot of companies trying, like doing, TV ads and things like that. You start doing, that's one of the reasons. Number two, digital, there's so much noise right now, so much noise. Like the way you grab people's attention, brand can get, people's attention is via, you see that billboards are coming back. Go like, in San Francisco, my God, you're surrounded by billboards everywhere right now in San Francisco. You see the same thing, like New York City, not as much, but in New York City also you see a lot of billboards. It's because like digital, there's so much noise right now. Can't get people's attention.
Yeah, I think that TV may become the new thing. I don't know if you saw the partnership between Roku and Walmart, that they'll be able to actually purchase things while watching something on TV. Maybe next you're going to be doing like next US Open, some 1Password that like you can get some of your population there and they could just go to a website or something like that. I think that interesting things are coming. So there's a question here from Roshan Joseph. For B2B business, what are some innovative ways to assess the market size and segment the market when information on who is buying what is obscure?
Oh, that's like it's almost like a consulting case study. That reminds me of business school. I think majority of the stuff, Roshan, majority of the stuff nowadays you'll be able to find, but you can go back to your napkin math if needed to be, worst case scenario. Like, remember those market estimation cases we used to do for consulting? You can do something similar to figure it out. Like for example, for password manager, right? We end up can do something similar. Like, who are the tech-savvy audiences, right? Let's assume of those tech-savvy audiences, 40% are willing to, pay for the password manager, and how much are they going to pay for a month? And you just do the math from there, basically. And that's the only way I could think about. If you don't find that information in like, if you don't find that information on Google search, because I'm sure like you will find market size for anything you're looking for right now in Google, most of it.
Any other questions? Anybody else wants to ask a question before I go back to my crazy questions?
Yeah, I sent you a question on private chat.
Do you want to ask your questions, Gaurav?
I could just ask it, I guess. So, Raj, one thing that I've seen is there's always this love-hate relationship. I don't know how much love is there, but a lot of hate definitely between sales and marketing. And obviously marketing tries to do its best to generate a good funnel, right? Which is targeted, but many times sales doesn't pay much attention to it, right? Or they just don't follow up. So the leads, they just end up getting stale for whatever reason, right? So that's one effect, like a phenomena I've seen. That's one thing. What kind of what's the best way to just have a really good collaborative relationship with sales and make sure that whatever we are doing is actually working for them in your experience?
Yeah, I think Gaurav, trust building happens with credibility in the workplace. I mean, that's where it starts. So I think the only way I can think about how you can improve your relationship with the sales organization is basically sending them highly effective leads. I know it's easy to say and hard to do. It's incredibly hard to do, but this is where your lead scoring functionality is going to be very, very important. Because if you're sending a lot of leads and if your sales team have to go through 1,000 leads to get like one qualified prospect, instead of that, if your sales team have to go through like 10 leads to go get to one qualified prospect, then obviously your sales team is going to more gravitate towards your leads versus what they are sourcing. So I have seen organizations, and don't get me wrong, there is always this tension between sales and marketing, but it also depends a lot on the leaders, especially on both the sales and marketing side, to kind of build that bridge and build that relationship. And then at a lower level, it's all about credibility. Like, hey, other leads you're sending to the sales team, are they effective or not? Remember, they're incentivized to close deals because they get compensated based on how much business they bring in. Whereas it's not the same scenario on the marketing side. Marketing doesn't get compensated based on how many leads you send to the sales team. So if you're generating business for them, they will for sure go through leads.
Got it. Thank you. I did have a follow-up question. So, when you compare top of the funnel activities and then mid of the funnel activities, many times what happens is when you do a top of the funnel, you get a lot of unfocused leads. I mean, you try, right? I mean, you have the correct criteria and ICP and everything, but still, when you are doing a very high level customer experience kind of a campaign, the leads that need to really convert for specific product areas become very unfocused eventually, right? So in that case, some of the mid funnel activities might work better. So in your experience or knowledge, like, is there something that works better on the mid funnel side for basically lead conversion? Any advice on that one?
Yeah, Gaurav, that's very specific question because it differs from market to market.
Yeah,
it depends on the product. So there's like so many variables, and as you know, like especially on the sales side, like anything which like I call it sales-led motion.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be multi-touch. There has to be something in mid funnel. There has to be something in top of funnel. There has to be something at bottom of funnel. So there to be multi-touch process. And it depends on product to product, market to market, like what vertical you're going after, and things like that. So it's. I don't know if there is a generic answer to your question, to be honest.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Anybody else wants to go off mute to ask a question? Okay, I'll go to one of my questions here. So how do you ensure that your team can challenge your thoughts and help you to make better decisions?
Remember I mentioned the radical candor? That is all that this is all about, because you have to build that culture within the organization where people are not afraid to bring up the challenges within the organization. And that all starts with being honest and transparent with each other. I should be able to challenge it. I have another ethos, I have 4 leadership ethos. So one is servant leadership, second is radical candor, third is empathy, and the fourth one is equitable. And what I mean by that is, I don't want the person with the, I talk about it a lot. I don't want the person with the, the highest title or the loudest voice winning an argument in a meeting. I want every single person in the room to have kind of an equal voice. So you have to kind of set the culture of the organization where people should be able to, challenge people, even their bosses. I remember this, and I use this. I did a podcast very recently on leadership, and I was giving this example. I remember one of my early days when I joined Google. Larry just became the CEO at that time, and one of the things Larry said in all hands is, "Hey, if you," and this is primarily he was talking to the engineering team. "Hey, if you disagree with your engineering manager, you should let him or her know that you disagree. And you should feel free to challenge your engineering manager if you disagree." Which I kind of built a culture where people, are free to question, some of the leaders, right? Because I have a blind spot. I don't know what's happening on a daily basis in a corner of my organization because I'm not there. So it's important that you encourage that within the organization.
And how do you make this happen in the virtual world? Because I feel that it's harder. Just because some people, they take the mic and they go with it and they hog the calls. And that happens in multiple sides, right? Like multiple clients that I work with, sometimes we do workshop because we want to hear what the team has to say. And let's say that the most senior person in the room is the one that just go with the conversation. It's very hard to really understand what the team thinks about that.
Yeah, I think the only thing you can do there, right, is basically call people out in the sense like, hey, you have been quiet for some time. What do you think about this, right? I mean, that's the only thing you can do to help. In certain scenarios, if you're not there, like if it's a client and it's happening from a client side, I don't know how you would handle it. But if it's your team, then you can always call them out and say, hey, I didn't hear you talk at all. Like, what's your opinion on this? You can call people specifically hard, but you're right, absolutely right. It's harder on remote. It's really hard.
Yeah. When I don't know, it's your 5th call and you have 10 people, just wanted to go through that one. So maybe you can do some work. I think it just gets harder and harder.
And Zoom is intense because remember when you are in real life in a conference room, you're not staring at each other all the time. In Zoom, you are like in full focus mode. So that's why the Zoom fatigue is a true thing, actually, because it's more stressful. So that's why what I do usually is my screen size is much smaller compared to my Zoom screen. It's much smaller compared to my laptop screen. And I do that specifically because it's less taxing to my brain.
Yeah, that's a very good suggestion. That's good. Okay, so any questions before I go to the next one here? If no, I'll go to the next one. What does work-life balance mean to you? Is this something that you prioritize?
I strongly believe in this philosophy that if you're not happy in life, you'll not be happy at work. Have you seen this ad, this California? If people in California know this, like great cheese come from happy cows. Have you seen that ad? Where they show there's a TV ad actually where they show like the cows are basically grazing and then they compare it with like in a winter, like Michigan, for example, and their whole philosophy is like because the California has such great weather and the cows are happy, that's why it creates amazing cheese. I kind of believe in that philosophy actually. Like if you're not happy in life, you'll not be able to do great work. So it's very important, and especially during, especially with pandemic, this has happened more because there is nothing called work-life balance. It's called work-life harmony or a work-life blend because everything has got blended together. So now it has become more important than ever, to make sure that people have like good life, happy life, mental health, physical health is important in order for you to do some really great work.
How do you make sure that you have it and your team also prioritize it?
Lately I've been starting like going for like a run in the morning, and it really helps me a lot. And then once in a while I take like walk breaks, but if you are asking me honestly, I would love to go to office every day because I'm a very social person in general.
Mm-hmm.
For me, like working from is incredibly hard. I'd love to go to office because I think this is one of the things also which is happening. You hear about all this mental health issues. It's because of that, because you're like stuck in your office, and especially happened during the pandemic. Because you couldn't do anything. You're like, and that is the reason we moved to New York actually, because in California we used to stay in the suburbs, and me and my wife, mother, we don't have like kids, so we'll work during the daytime, then we'll have dinner, and then in the evening they'll be like, oh, what should we do? Watch TV, read a book? Oh, let's go and work. So we'll go to our individual offices to work. Now we are like, there's so much to do here in the evenings. You don't feel like working. So it's kind of helping to some extent. That's all.
No, that's good. Yeah, no, definitely finding some balance is important. And more I've been trying to help the teams also to unplug. Because I think we're still in a culture that people kind of brag about, oh, last night's meeting, 4 a.m. meetings and whatnot. I hear that.
I don't know.
In my role.
I don't know, Renata, if you've noticed, there was this thing in Silicon Valley, and you'll see a lot in Twitter, like people are working hard, busting their ass off. You don't see that a lot, people talking about it proudly on Twitter anymore. It has kind of faded a little bit. And I think it's primarily because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I hope that things are changing, the cultures are changing. I've been talking a lot about wellness and balance in my organization. I have a blog about that and whatnot, but it's like really trying to move the needle because it's what you're talking about, right? There's the mental health and people burn out, and then you have attrition, then you have to backfill great people because now they people don't leave to go to another organization. They leave to take a break. So I've seen that happening like over and over.
Oh, haven't you heard the term Great Resignation? That's what it is.
Yep. It is. There's now a new song from Beyonce about that. If you haven't heard that one yet. Don't break my soul type of thing. That's good. So what are your favorite books?
Oh yeah, see, all these books I've read, every single one of them. I see you have books which are neatly arranged. Are these based on categories or?
Oh no, they're based in color. They're really arranged based in color, not in categories. I wanted them to look
so, like, there's so many books I can talk about, but there are two books specifically which I read during my the pandemic years, which are like I think it has impacted me a lot. One is this book called Sleep. I don't know if any of you have read about it.
Sleep or Why We Sleep?
Why We Sleep. Yes, Why We Sleep. Sorry. Yes, that's the name of the book.
Yeah.
Oh, you have it?
Those who don't know about that, this is the book. We actually did, like, we used to do book clubs in person in Palo Alto before the pandemic. And I think that was the last one that we did. That
So, by
book
the way,
changed my life.
the reason why this book is important is this book is, I'm talking about, changed the culture in Silicon Valley to some extent as well.
Yep.
People always think, oh, if you're up like 5 nights and working really, really hard, you can like, you can still be productive, but basically this book proves you wrong, which is like, and this is based on research. It's not like some fluffy book like someone has written. And the book, like, every single person in this room should read that book. It's amazing. And the second book is like, it probably, I don't know if any of you heard about this book called Da Vinci. Walter Isaacson, the guy who wrote the Steve Jobs autobiography, he wrote that book as well.
Which one?
Da Vinci.
Oh yeah, no, I read that one too. Yeah.
Da Vinci, I think is the name. Yeah. It's basically based on Da Vinci. And the reason why that book is important, it's amazing when you read that book, you realize how curious that person was. Remember, this was not like where, if you want to know about, for example, any kind of stats you want to know about, you can Google it nowadays, but those days you couldn't. So he would create every day he would get up in the morning and he would create a note of like the 10 things he wanted to know about that day. And then he would go, and he remember Da Vinci was an artist, but he was a scientist at the same time. And he was very curious, very curious. And I think one of those qualities which you see in a lot of people who are successful as well, like being curious and asking questions. So I think that book has also actually changed my perception, because I started reading a lot of books like Why We Sleep. Like, I'm more curious. I'm reading a book right now called The Body. I don't know if you have heard about this book. It's written by The Body.
No, this one is new for me.
So it gives you interesting stats about, it goes to like every chapter is a different parts of your body, and it gives you interesting stats about each part of your body. Like 3 of your smallest bones in the body is in your ear, and it tells you, it's very interesting. I'm not gonna like if that is the other book, I'm really enjoying it, reading it right now.
Yeah, no, I'll add this to my list. Like, I really like the Walter Isaacson's books. I'm actually in the newest one. I do Audible just because you're too big. I read the Steve Jobs one. The other ones I do the Audible. It's about Jennifer Doudna, created the CRISPR, like one.
Yeah, I read that book as well. Yeah. That's a fascinating story.
Yeah, like when you were not in academy and you understand how that world works, I was like, that's so new to me. Didn't know that.
I think you should watch the documentary on Netflix as well, which is called Human Nature. You should watch that documentary as well.
I will. So I want to give time for people to ask questions. Feel free to unmute yourself. Let me see if there's anything here in the chat.
I've been talking for an hour, so now we need a break.
Raj, go blue.
Go blue.
So how was it like working with Ryan Reynolds and that production?
I didn't work with Ryan Reynolds. I'll tell you right now. So we worked with Maximum Effort, which is their agency.
Yeah.
But Ryan is a Canadian, so my CEO Shiner, he has talked to Ryan multiple times actually, because Ryan Reynolds was also an investor at 1Password, so he invested in 1Password.
Cool. I was one of those people that had heard of it, but I'd never, I'd get the prompt every 3 months, change the password here, there, and then make up some weak password. And then I finally decided to do it. Now I have like 170 logins, and it's just a great product. So, thank you for prioritizing the product itself, and then the marketing can get people like me to eventually convert. So
yeah, it changes your life.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, if you haven't used 1Password, it changes your life. That's my last pitch before I.
Any other questions, comments? Anybody wants to get off mute? Come on, guys. I know it's lunchtime and you're hungry, but
I can ask a question.
Yeah.
Hey there. It's so fun being with Michigan alumni. I live out in Washington State, just outside of Portland, Oregon, but it's so great to be here. And you're such a great speaker, Raj, very enthusiastic. So thank you for that. I was just wondering, so I manage a medium-sized team, but it's been such a change for how we've worked. I work for an engineering and environmental firm.
Mhm.
And just the constant new things that come up, I feel like weekly with remote management of teams, remote selling, events. And I hope this isn't just like the most boring question in the world, but what have you learned? Like, I feel like I'm constantly having to be really self-aware and going like, okay, I thought that someone who's working remote across the country couldn't be a strong team manager. But now I have to rethink that because people are not coming back to work. So what is like maybe your top takeaway or realization that you've learned over this time about just the remote workforce and everything you're trying to accomplish in your business?
Yeah, I think remote work, like let's start with remote work is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. I don't think it's changed. I don't think that is changing. What's going to happen is the hybrid work is going to become more and more common because there will be people like me who will be like, I'd like to go to the office at least, once or twice a day. So it has completely changed the way people are going to work in the next 15, 20 years. I mean, I think it's going to go to a place at a certain point in near future where the offices will be very fluid, which like for example, I go to New York, which is like a block from here. And I get to interact with people who work in different companies who are not even part of my own company. So I think one of the things this pandemic has done is like completely disrupted the way we're going to work. But the problem is we still don't have the right tools. So you'll see a lot of new interesting remote work tools coming in the near future as well. Now, from a leadership perspective, team management perspective, it has introduced a lot of new challenges. Like I was talking about, mental health and burnout is an issue. And the primary reason is like the work life has blended so much. During the pandemic, like fathers and mothers were doing, 2 jobs at the same time, which was very stressful, right? Now, though, it's like things are becoming much, much better. But my point is, it's also has kind of, you need new muscle right now from a leader perspective as you start managing remote teams, which you necessarily didn't need like 2.5 years back.
Well, thank you. It's nice to hear that even you are facing those challenges.
Every single person.
Yeah.
So
Really been an equalizer, I think, in a lot of ways.
That's what we were talking about. Like it has also helped because, for example, heights doesn't matter anymore. At one point in time, heights played a role. Doesn't matter.
I didn't think about that.
So I want to respect everybody's time. So thank you. Thanks for the questions, who asked questions. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Raj, for your time. I know it's very hard for you to take 1 hour of your very busy day. Janette, if you're still there, do you want to talk about the next events coming in 10 seconds?
Hi, 10 seconds. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to Raj and Renata. If you're local to the Bay Area, we have our annual student send-off coming up August 7th. And if you're not local, we have our first ever virtual reality event coming up September 7th in conjunction with the Silicon Valley Club of San Francisco and New York. We'll also have the Director of VR at the University of Michigan, Jeremy Nelson, joining us virtually. So hope to see you in person or in virtual reality. Thank you for supporting Silicon Valley.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a
Go
great
Blue.
weekend. Go Blue.
Thank you.